Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen stories. In this video, a dumb racist Karen gets knocked out cold and gets instant karma after slapping my son. And in our second story, a neighbor built an underground pool on my property. Let's dive right into the video to find out what happened. So my family moved into a new neighborhood within the last year and it's been going alright for the most part. My wife Ava, 33 female, and I, 35 male, get along fairly well with our neighbors, and our son Tyrone, 10 male, has made a few friends already. However, there's one thorn in our side, and that is our next door neighbor Ara, 40s female. To start, my whole family and I are black and Ara is Indian. While I have seen some things online about there being significant amount of colorism amongst Indian people against one another, and even there being a lot of anti-black racism from newer immigrants recently, it is another thing entirely to witness it firsthand. Well, before this situation, her comments were more of the sneaky microaggression kind. Lots of snide bits of conversation about how the demographics of the neighborhood have changed and stuff about the property values potentially going down. Ava and I have for the most part just been ignoring and avoiding her, which seemed to be a mutual effort as we rarely saw Ara past the first few interactions shortly after moving in. Ava is more athletic than myself and Tyrone takes after her in that way. She regularly goes to our local gym and is part of a women's boxing group. Nothing professional and mostly for fun, but she is good. Tyrone has started getting into basketball as of late and has been practicing dribbling and throws in the front yard and driveway. The day of the incident was a nice day outside and we all happened to have the day off, so we were enjoying the weather. Tyrone was playing in the front and Ava and I were relaxing on our porch, still able to keep an eye on Tyrone but shaded from the sun. We were not aware that Ara was home at the time. Our porch is on the left side of the house while Ara is on the right and blocked from view by our garage from the porch. Well, either way, Tyrone lost control of his ball and it went onto the grass and rolled over to Ara's side. She has a very nicely manicured lawn and I've seen her gardening sometimes while leaving/returning home. Anyway, the ball ends up on her side of the lawn and Tyrone runs over to go get it just out of sight from the porch. Seconds after that, the yelling starts and Ava and I are out of our seats instantly and rushing over to see what is happening. According to my son, what we missed in that 3-second delay was Ira storming out of her house and picking up the basketball, throwing it full force back at my son. I assume she must have been watching him from her window or something to have that kind of timing. He caught it, but she was aiming for his head with it. She was yelling at full volume and gesturing wildly. She then called Tyrone a monkey as well as made a comment about going back where he came from. I suppose that she had not noticed us at that point and she was pretty laser focused on Tyrone. Tyrone beat us to the punch and told Ara that her words were rude and immature and that she should be ashamed. He then told her to go to hell. While we tried to curb that kind of language, I was and am willing to give him a pass on this one. To be fair, I probably would not have been nearly as calm if I had the chance to lay into her for her comments, so keeping that cool is still something I'm quite proud of for. And that is when Ara laid her hands on our son and slapped him across the face. Ava was closer to them and was faster to boot. Between one blink and the next was pushing Tyrone behind her and punching Ara in the jaw. It must have been a solid one, or Ara just wasn't braced for it because she ragdolled near instantly, just fully prone in seconds. She got knocked out cold. After a few moments of collecting ourselves and getting Tyrone some ice for his face, I ended up calling 911, both the police and an ambulance, just in case Ava did any serious damage. She did, after all, assaulting a child physically and verbally. Plus, I was feeling pretty good about the security cameras on the side of the house I had installed a few weeks prior. I made the call and we waited. The whole commotion drew a lot of attention from other neighbors, and while we were worried that having a mid-40s woman laid out on her front lawn would be a very bad look for us, it seems that we were not the only family on our street that Ara had made disparaging comments about. Since we avoided her most of the time, we had never brought her up in conversation with our other neighbors, so they never discussed their experiences with her. Her microaggressions and rude comments have been her norm for as long as she's lived here apparently. Safe to say, no one was too upset seeing her like fact that some of the neighbors even stuck around after the explanation to give their own testimonies of her behavior as additions to the report we were gonna make. Finally though, we ended up pressing charges against Ira, and us and all of the neighbors who stuck around until the police showed up added their experience to the report. I also handed over the security footage of the slap, which I was told would help move things along. The paramedics handled Ira. While all of this was happening, I was not paying that much attention to them at this point. She had been conscious again for a good few minutes before the authorities arrived, but I guess she saw the crowd of people that she's been rude and nasty to in the past talking about the police arriving soon and decided to stay silent to not further incriminate herself. She was quiet either way. I don't really know why she didn't go back into her house at that point, and I have not bothered to even ask. We get everything sorted and everyone goes home, though we exchanged numbers with a few neighbors we hadn't had the opportunity to get to know just yet. Friends through adversity, why not? From what I gathered afterwards, Ava did not do anything more lasting than a potential bruise and a bit tongue. Come to think of it though, that may have been why she was so quiet. Regardless, Ava and I settled Tyrone in the house and discussed how exactly we were gonna go about living next door to this woman for the time being. We decided that we were gonna follow a strength in numbers procedure, and no one was to hang around in the front yard for longer than it takes to get into a car by themselves. That way we minimize any opportunities for Ira to speak to us or even get particularly close. Tyrone was told that he wouldn't be able to play basketball in the yard for a while, though he was very understanding of the scenario. He was not too upset about that part. Ava and I are still working with him through being assaulted by a grown-up, and we are really imparting to him how he was not in any way at fault for what happened, and that Ira was way out of line in her behavior. He is a really smart kid, and I'm very proud of the person he has grown into. It took a little while in the processing part, but eventually Ira was found guilty of assault and battery on our son. At first we were worried that she was going to put up more of a fight against the whole procedure, but it seems as though the whole time she was mostly more bark than bite. She paid a fine around $500 or so and has been really avoiding us now. Occasionally beforehand we would catch glimpses of each other if she was out gardening or if I was on my way to/from work. Now her car disappears and reappears with no sight of her anywhere. Tyrone jokes she got so embarrassed she's invisible now. All in all, physical assault and racist remarks aside, I would say it was a fairly solid win in my books. Sometimes it pays to keep your hands to yourself, especially when your neighbor is part of a boxing club. And yeah guys, if you thought that neighbor was crazy, wait for the next one who built an underground pool on OP's property without permission. Let's dive right in. When my parents died, I inherited their home since I was an only child and everything went to me as the next of kin. The only thing was that the house was in a rural area and I had moved onto a bigger and better city life for myself. I did the common thing of just ignoring something until I felt like dealing with it. It took me 6 months to actually go down to the house and check things out. I figured that I needed to decide what the hell I was going to do with the house and all the property that it came with. My options seemed to be move into the home and leave the city, which I didn't want to do, sell the house, also didn't want to do that, or rent it out, something I wasn't sure about. That entire issue took a backseat once I found out that the property had been messed with while it was unattended. Normally, this would mean it was vandalized or destroyed or something along those lines. Instead, it had been given a type of improvement that I didn't understand fully until it was explained to me. So on the property there was something that looked like a hidden tunnel in the ground. I was not adventurous enough to go in and see where the heck it led to. I found out later though and was able to find the spot on my property where it ended up that a pool was built there. The tunnel was a giant underground water slide that would lead to the hidden pool. Not far from the pool was a small hut just big enough for a person to probably stay in for a couple of nights. This was not something my parents built and I was beyond confused. That was when this guy that turned out to be the neighbor approached me since I was looking around. I cannot explain what it was exactly, but just something about his face and how he moved made me feel like I should secretly turn on my phone's audio recording. Neighbor, hey man, I see that you're checking out our projects. Me, I've never seen anything like that before, it's very unique. Neighbor, oh man, you have no idea. My buddy and I decided to copy some stuff we found off the internet about building a primitive swimming pool and hut. It took us 102 days to get the whole thing finished since we just used basic tools and no machines. It was almost like he was pitching the concept to me, and then what he said next made me understand why. Neighbor, if you want to stay for a day or two in the hut and enjoy the pool, we are renting it out. Good pricing too. One of the cheapest you can find on Airbnb. Me, what about the house over there on the same property? Is that where you live? Neighbor, oh no, I actually live next door, but don't worry, nobody's gonna bother you or anything. Me, nobody lives there? Neighbor, nope. The old people living there died and nobody came around, so it was a shame to just waste the property. I didn't want to touch the house and get sued or something. If anyone actually owned this property, they would come by now, so we figured doing something amazing with it. Interested? Me, not right now. Could I get maybe a phone number and name in case I changed my mind? And the idiot actually just handed over his information without thinking, and I had everything I needed. I did not want to just blurt out that I was the owner because I wanted to let him dig himself deeper into trouble on his own to create less work for me. This guy destroyed my property and felt like he was just gonna get away with it because he didn't touch the actual house. He was gonna learn that he was very wrong and that messing with my family property would end badly. I went around to other neighbors and introduced myself to those that did not know or did not recognize me as an adult. I asked them questions about if they noticed neighbor building things, and they told me that they did and assumed that I had sold the property to him. When I told them that I didn't and to please not mention anything to the neighbor, they were happy to agree. It turns out everybody loved my parents and did not like this neighbor because he was just young, loud and disrespectful. I really wanted to make sure that I had enough against this guy to make sure he never screwed with my property again. I spent money hiring a private investigator to look into the neighbor specifically when it came to this underground pool. What I got were pictures of him selling the place out and accepting cash, so he did not need to report anything for taxes. I took him to court with my audio recordings, testimony from other neighbors, and my evidence from the investigator. Saying that he got destroyed would be an understatement to what happened in the end with him. He got charged for trespassing and destruction of property when it came down to what he did with my land, and as for everything else, he was getting hit with fines like crazy. He never had his underground thing tested, so there was nothing saying the tunnel wouldn't just collapse and kill somebody from being built wrong. He also wasn't renting it out using proper channels or reporting the money that he was making from the renting. He was in trouble, and as for it being on my property, he had a choice to make. Pay for the thing he spent over 100 days making to be destroyed like it never existed, or give me the rights to it. He picked the latter, and it finally gave me an idea of what I could do with the property. I made sure the water slide was reinforced and everything passed safety inspections, and I also signed up for an Airbnb account so that everything I did was legal and above board. So from that moment on, I was ready to start renting out the house and having the secret water slide as a selling point to make even more money from people. It turns out what he did was a pretty popular trend, and people were jumping on the opportunity to rent a place like mine. It did cause me to travel back and forth more from the city to maintain the property and pool, but it was worth it. The other thing that was worth it was spending all that time and money making sure my neighbor didn't get away with anything he did. I have not mentioned yet his reaction when he found out that the person he was bragging to about the property was the actual owner. He saw me in court and was so shocked before reality hit him, and he turned green in the face. He managed to avoid going to jail for anything, but whenever I come by, I notice that he is nowhere to be seen. I also never got a complaint from a renter about a crazy neighbor, so my guess is that he's laying low because he knows next time he screws with me, I'm gonna make sure he ends up in jail for a long time. And here, Ripe Stars, if you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much, and the next one is a relationship story, and it is titled My 27 female girlfriend wants me 28 male to hide my accent when I meet her parents. So I am from India but have lived in the US for the past 4 years. I came here for my masters and now work in Chicago. I've been dating this girl for the past 4 months and she wants me to go visit her parents with her next weekend. For context, she is white and born and brought up in the US. Her family has been here for 6 generations. I still have hints of an Indian accent. I don't think I have a very strong accent to begin with, and it's reduced over time, but it's definitely still noticeable. I'm not ashamed of it, but it just naturally changed over time, and I'm also able to pretty much neutralize it if I really need to, though I try not to do that because I concentrate more on the accent than less on what I'm speaking about. Yesterday, my girlfriend asked if I could please make sure my accent is more American when I meet her parents. I asked why, and she said they are not used to meeting Indian people and are already unfamiliar with the culture, and I shouldn't give them another excuse to dislike me, and she then laughed. I kind of saw where she was coming from, but not gonna lie, I was also a bit offended. Like I said, if I need to, I can neutralize the accent, but that's for things like 30-minute Zoom calls at work. I definitely want to be myself and not bother too much about my accent when I'm speaking with my girlfriend's parents, who might be family one day. I could just bite the bullet this one time, but I'm thinking of having a conversation with my girlfriend after the weekend to let her know that this offended me. What would be the best way to do this? Edit, since this has come up in a few comments, her parents have lived their lives in a small town with not much racial diversity at all. Their impression of India and Indian people is negative due to stuff they've heard or read about in the media, for example Indian scammers, etc. So my girlfriend's reasoning is that having a more American accent would make them less wary and be more accepting of me. And here, ripe stars, let me know what you think about this in the comments. To be honest, if I would be OP, I would get out of that relationship ASAP. Anyway, comment number 1, your girlfriend's parents are racists. She is hoping that if you hide your accent, you will come off as less Indian. This is a pretty significant problem, not because she happened to be born to crappy parents, but because she is taking their side and their comfort and putting it above your own. That's not cool. It's also a model for the future of your relationship. What happens if you got serious, got married, have a kid? She is basically saying you would always have to hide a pretty significant part of who you are. It won't just be the accent. If her parents are racist enough to judge you based on how you speak, imagine how little they'll be tolerant of all the other aspects of your culture. Comment number 2, nope. Begin the way you mean to go on. Don't start out trying to be less Indian. Be yourself, and if your girlfriend and her parents are not cool with that, then you will know where you stand. I come from a similar background as your girlfriend, and my brother's wife is not white and not American. I understand that this is probably difficult for your girlfriend, but she cannot stand with her legs on both sides of the fence, so to speak. She can either go along with her parents' racist attitudes and find herself a man they would approve of, or she can decide that they are wrong. Don't let her pull you into a life of pretending you all approve of their attitudes and trying to please them. You deserve a girl who is proud to love you just as you are. Update to the story. Thank you to everyone who responded. I decided to address this with my girlfriend last night and not until after meeting her parents. Pretty much refused to do this and said I would rather be myself while meeting them and that her request is unreasonable and frankly a bit demeaning. I also flipped it around and asked how she would feel if I asked her to speak in an Indian accent in front of my family. She said she'd never do that because it could be seen as mocking the accent. She did see my point of view but insisted that she loved me for who I am and did not want to change. Her parents are, in her words, difficult and she wanted to make sure they liked me because she really likes me and wants this to work. I told her this is something she needs to address with them, and if they need more time, that's fine, but for now we have decided I won't go with her to meet them next weekend. She's going to speak with them first and then make the intro a couple months later. I'm kind of happy that I stood up for myself, but I'm also hoping this works out. I really do like her and want to believe her and that her parents are good people, hoping for the best. Update number 2, what a crazy few days it's been. After our conversation a few days ago, we decided to carry on and that she would speak with her parents, and well, I was not entirely comfortable with the scenario, and something was not sitting right with me, especially after reading through all the comments here. We were out for drinks with friends yesterday and she brought this up. We were all a bit tipsy, but she told them everything about how she wanted me to change my accent, made fun of me for feeling bad about it, and made it seem like she was doing me a favor by speaking to her parents about me. She said every relationship needs compromises. Our friends also chimed in saying, I'm lucky that she's doing this for me. It honestly felt surreal and like I was in high school and being bullied. A post for another day. Anyway, I didn't want to do anything while tipsy but broke up with her this morning. She is trying to blame it on the alcohol, but I've decided that this is just not gonna end well and it's best we go our separate ways. So anyway, this relationship is over. Thank you to everyone who read and commented. I truly appreciate it. And here, ripe stars, I would say that OP did the right thing here. He probably dodged a bullet. Let me know what you think about this story in the comments. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I used to be in charge of the printer room in a rather large company. We shipped a crap ton of product every day, and everything shipped had to have the accompanying printed label and documents. Nothing can even be loaded onto the trucks without this paperwork. Now, this was in the olden days of the 90s, so we had 7 massive 4-foot tall dot matrix printers that did all the work. These printers were temperamental bastards, and if the paper jammed, the printer did not automatically stop printing. It would just keep pushing and jamming more and more paper into the machine until, if left unattended, it would break down. Running the printer room was a 2-person job. When I started, I trained for 2 full weeks with the 2 current printer room employees. One was being promoted and I was replacing him. It was a rough effing 2 weeks, let me tell you. Getting the hang of the job, the various things you had to learn, do, etc. One thing that made it even more complicated was the fact that each printer had its own personality with its own problems. Another was the fact that a problem in one printer could have a different fix than the exact same problem in another. The job would be quiet for 45 minutes straight, during which we did routine maintenance and such, but was really slow and quiet and restful. Because this company processed its shipping orders in batches once an hour. And then boy, on the hour, every hour, the batch of orders would go through and thousands of orders would come spitting out. Now, if you were on top of things and kept everything running smoothly, the orders would print out very neatly and quickly. But if you didn't know what you were doing, if you didn't maintain things just right, you would get a backup and things would go to hell very fast. And when one machine went down, you had to fix it really fast before the next one jammed, because guaranteed those machines would jam up multiple times on every batch print job. So I've been working the print room for several months and things were great, and then my coworker gave his 2 weeks notice. We tried to train my replacement, but he was incredibly lazy and got fired fairly a few days after the end of his training, which left me in the printer room alone, and then the bosses inform me that my position is being phased out and I'm going to be replaced by 2 employees transferred from a different department. So not only am I losing my job, but I have to train my replacements. And I desperately needed a good recommendation from this company, so I couldn't just quit or half-ass it. I quickly learned that both of these transfers are lazy and useless, and they'd been with the company for decades, had friends in the head office and knew their jobs were safe. So I would show them how to do something and they would flat out laugh and say, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." Every day I'd be trying to train them and they would ignore me, chat with each other, leave to go sit in the cafeteria, etc. Leaving me to do a 2-person job alone. Luckily I was good enough to handle the workload, but it was annoying. Mindful of the fact that I needed a reference of this company, I kept extensive notes on each day's progress. I clearly documented every single instance of the replacements refusing to learn, even listened to my instructions, and I also followed up daily with my direct supervisor, and he knew what was going on, and my notes went into the company files and were passed up the line. Despite my scathing reports, head office did nothing, and now it's my last day. This is the day the training process assigned for letting the newbies work alone, with no help or supervision allowed, to see how well they handle the job and the pressure, and well, I was, in writing, forbidden to help them or answer any questions. As I expected, things went wrong pretty much immediately, minutes into the first batch of orders. One of the biggest printers jammed and all the clueless twats had no idea how to fix the printer jam. Because they ignored me every time I tried to show them how, so they turned to me and demand that I fix everything. I'm sitting on a desk, coffee in one hand, an apple in the other, and smile and say, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." So one of them is yelling at me while the other is basically thumping uselessly on the printer like a gorilla that just found a candy machine. Then a second printer jams. Paper starts spilling out of the back of the first printer, which, if you knew the job, was a really bad warning sign. "Well, I'm going to go to the cafeteria. Good luck," I say as I stand up. As I'm leaving, I hear a third printer crunch and jam up. I went to my supervisor and let him know what was happening. He said he not only expected as much, he had predicted so repeatedly to his supervisors. He once again specifically forbade me from offering any help. So I went to the cafeteria and read my book for a little over an hour. Then my supervisor comes to me to let me know what happened. The entire printer room is down, every single printer either jammed up or actually broken. The company is losing thousands of dollars every single minute. One of the shipper and receiving supervisors finds me, all in a panic, begging me to get the orders printed. "Sorry, I'm not allowed to do that," I replied. Now several people are running around outside the cafeteria, all in a panic, running from place to figure out why they don't have any shipping orders. The chaos took hours to resolve and I was not allowed to fix the problems. Anytime someone started giving me a hard time, my supervisor would intervene and show the memo from the bosses stating that I was forbidden to help in the printer room that day. I spent my entire last day at work drinking coffee, chatting with coworkers and reading my book. The whole fiasco ended up costing the company tens of thousands of dollars. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Have you ever seen that movie Hurt Locker? Yeah, that's me. That's what I used to do in the military before I lost my leg and was medically discharged. We were known as ammo technicians and an EXO, explosive ordnance officer, specialized in the disposal of out-of-date munition. I know what you're thinking, explosives have a sell-by date. Yep, they sure do. Well, every so often, we take all the useless ammunition out to the middle of the desert and blow it all up. It's an incredible sight. And well, the ammo gets dumped into this huge pile that was taller than me, I'm 6'5" by the way, and then blown up. We sat on top of our wagons 5 kilometers away, and the shockwave was still enough to almost blow us off the wagons. I can tell you're all wondering what this has to do with hurt locker. Well, it doesn't. On site EX disposal, it's just a small part of an ammo tax job, and most of the time we just send in a robot and blow it up. So anyways, back on track, one such time we had to dispose of a huge amount of munition. There was an accident which involved my leg, a large pallet of BAR mines, and a NIG, new in green, who didn't know how to ratchet straps up properly. Inevitably, the pallet slipped, dumping its entire load on my leg and crushing it beyond repair, which basically meant I had to have it chopped off halfway up the thigh. I was in pain for a very long time, and the following weeks were a blur. I got through it, had a successful amputation, and was grafted a prosthetic. The physio was tough and was all about being in the right frame of mind, which I was not for a very long time. But I got through that too and was medically discharged soon after. I was still at the point in my life where I needed to make regular visits to the hospital just to check that everything was progressing as it should, which it was. Though I had to take increasingly potent painkillers, which I was told was normal. A slow increase in dosage until the right level was met. On one such visit to the hospital, which was gonna be a simple x-ray to make sure the bone was not slicing through the muscle laid over it, I met the most despicable Karen you could ever hope to meet. She was probably the worst human being to walk the face of the earth, to be honest. So my appointment had been on a day when every man and his dog decided to get into accidents or have that strange lump on their thumb checked out. Or think that their little cold meant they had jungle fever. Seating was sparse, but most people are genuinely nice, and a man who had impaled a finger with a nail saw that I was an amputee and left me his seat. You wouldn't have known that I was crippled as I was wearing cargo pants, but the crutch I still needed to balance with and the limp was a dead giveaway. Being so busy, I could expect to wait hours before my appointment was ready, and in that time the hospital only seemed to get busier. I'll tell you one really good benefit about being in the military: you will learn to fall asleep anywhere and everywhere. So naturally, I took the opportunity to catch up on a little sleep. I was rudely woken up sometime later to a very harsh pain in my stump. It felt like someone was kicking me with spiked steel-capped boots. When I opened my eyes, I was not far off. Karen was hitting me in the thigh with her handbag. "Oh, so you're alive." She gave me such a stink eye, she then immediately demanded that I give my seat up for her. "Oh, are you an amputee too?" I asked just as I was about to let the woman sit down. I'm not a monster. "No, but you should always give your seat up to a woman," she demanded. "I'm sorry," I said to her, "but I'm an amputee. It hurts to stand for prolonged periods." Now, fool me for thinking that Karen was a decent woman and would understand and go pester someone else, but what I didn't realize is that I had just done the single worst thing in the world. I denied a Karen, and like a bull seeing red, she flipped a switch and turned nasty pretty quick. Now, being in the military, you meet a lot of different people, and I've seen that switch flip many times, especially during training. The training NCOs, non-commissioned officers, basically your lance corporals through to warrant officers, are experts at flipping that switch. I saw the realization in her face turn to disgust, and then as quickly as that turn to sheer unbridled rage. Her shouting could be heard from the next town over. "How dare you tell me you're a cripple? Get your lazy ass off my chair now!" And other words to that effect. Again, veteran here, I've taken more than my fair share of beatings and over-enraged corporals who found the tiniest speck of dust on my beret. So I was used to this level of in-your-face aggression. The thing is, I'm not in the military anymore, and I don't need to take this crap from anyone, especially not from Karen. I was not impolite to her by any stretch of the imagination. One of the core principles in the military is respect for others. So I calmly explained to her that I had an accident in the military and I was recently discharged. "Liar!" she screamed at the top of her voice, no doubt trying to draw attention to herself and embarrass me. Again, ex-military, I have done far worse things to embarrass myself, including calling naked bar during an officer's mess do. Karen ranted at me and I just sat there and took it. Now, Now and then, when I thought she lost steam, I tried to explain that I lost my leg in the army. This all occurred in the space of maybe 5 minutes. So basically, none of the doctors, nurses or security was fully aware of what was going on. "You're not a cripple, you fake veteran. My son is in the SAS, and when I tell him about you, he's gonna kick your butt," she was shouting while I was still sat down. When she realized that she was not gonna get a rise out of me or that no one was coming to take her side, she went all in and grabbed my leg. To be fair, she did grab the wrong leg and started yanking the damn thing out of its socket. "Get the F off of me!" I was shouting back. Yep, I lost all my composure at this point. The act of her yanking on my good leg was jarring my bad leg, and trust me, no amount of painkillers was gonna stop that SOB from hurting. At this point, others started getting involved, trying to get her off me. "See, I told you, he is faking. He's a sick douchebag." When I still didn't move from the chair, it was kind of hard to do so at this point, she grabbed my other leg and ripped the prosthetic clean off. I swear, the pain was so bad, my body became numb to it and I could feel my stomach threatening to show me what I had for breakfast. Thankfully, security finally showed up right as Karen was gonna beat me with my own leg. There was a tussle, I think. I was a little out of it right then, but at some point Karen had wrestled free of the security officers and was right up in my face. I bet you cannot guess what happened next. Well, I threw up right in her face. The pain had gotten so bad that my body went into shock, which meant purging my stomach contents. I remember being in a daze for a few hours, nurses hooking me up with saline and morphine, and soon after the doctor came in to check my stump was not damaged, which thankfully it wasn't, and the police came by and took my statement. I made sure Karen did not get off lightly, using a small portion of the compensation money from the military to pay for a decent lawyer. I got the money back from Karen and then some. She was left with a hefty fine, 6 months in jail, and a lesson in not being a witch to strangers. And during the court hearing, I met her son as well. He was not SAS, but he was Royal Marines and an amazing guy, most commandos are. We still go out drinking from time to time. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.